So we are really happy to have you all here with us. As Rachel already mentioned, this event, the first part will be here in the room, where our amazing speaker, Roberto Bonino, is going to guide you through the En-ROAD simulator. And actually, it's going to be very interactive because you will be able to guide him and to ask him to try different climate policy strategies and see what the outcome would be on different real world indicators. So this part will take place here, and afterwards we will all move, or those who can, to restaurant 1, where we will do some networking and talk a little bit further about the topic. So I'm really happy that I can welcome our speaker and our CERN alumnus, Roberto Bonino, who will be our guide through this topic. And I'm sure we all have a lot to learn from him. And without further ado, I leave the floor to you, and we are really curious to see whether we manage to reach the Paris Agreement.
Thank you, Simona. Well, first of all, let me thank Simona, Rachel, and the alumni of CERN for giving me this opportunity to come back to CERN after, 10 years I haven't set foot in the area, which also explains why I got lost on my way here. But okay, I'm not the only one, so also people are wandering around. Anyway, so the climate workshop. This is a workshop that is based on a simulator that's been developed by actually by Climate Interactive, which is an NGO closely associated to the MIT Management School and the sustainability initiative of the MIT Management School, and brought to you by Luzval, which is basically us. That's Lucia, my partner is Luzval and partner in life, and myself. I used to be, in some previous life, I used to be a physicist. I spent the first 20 years of my professional life in the area doing research in various experiments, mostly detector development. And then I switched to basically management and entrepreneurial activities. I had the opportunity to create a couple businesses. And now I'm working with Luzval, which was created actually by Lucia in 2017, focusing on coaching, in particular on coaching for technical profile. And she has a specific interest in women in science. And if you trigger her on it, she will tell you a lot about it. And then I joined her a few years later when I left my latest business, and we work on basically promoting climate education, but also promoting alternative management alternative ways of doing of organizing companies. And it's a system called sociocracy. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. And I said climate education. And basically we run this type of events, which we're going to do today. So basically I will introduce some of the concepts. We're going to play together with the simulator. We are going to play in an interactive way. I'll give you a link on the web and ask some questions, and you tell me which strings and levers you want to pull, and we'll try to see what happens. And I also will ask you, what do you think will happen? And then double check that your expectations are correct, or maybe you will have surprise. In some cases, and you see the pictures there, we also run it in a more playful way, where it's really a role play, where we have groups of people. This was 3 teams of 40 researchers. We ran that in Montpellier last years, and in each team we would make multiple groups impersonating different stakeholders, and they have to come up with proposal to address climate change, but they also have to reach an agreement. So it's a negotiation game about climate change. So there's impersonal stakeholders from the oil and gas, government, new energies, Extinction Rebellion, and they have to reach a consensus. And we test and we show online the current status of the consensus. And the objective, of course, is together to reach a temperature rise within the limits of the Paris Accord. So let me introduce some of the concepts. And the first thing I would like to do is to ask you, so we also test that it works well, ask you, and hopefully the online people are seeing the same thing. So you can either go to slido.com and it asks for a code and you put En-ROADS, or you can flash the QR code and basically type your answer to this question: what do you feel concerning climate change? Okay, answers are coming. We'll ignore the test. I forgot to clean it up. Concern, despondent. Okay, lots of concern. Hopeless, fear, inevitable, worried, anger, and inaction. Let's see, wait for a couple more. Anxiety. Actually, there's a whole field of psychology in eco-anxiety, and climate anxiety, especially in the younger generations, is a real issue, and it's a real problem for mental health. Number one crisis: anger and inaction, overwhelmed, powerless, topic of the century, inevitable. Okay, I think we got the message, and I think many people feel like that, and that's more or less what I expected. Those people that usually come to this type of events have a real concern about climate. So let me stop it here. And so I'm sure you know most of it, but just to put everybody on the same page. So basically the key issue is the Earth receives light from the sun. The visible light goes straight through the atmosphere. It warms up the Earth, that then radiates in the infrared. Without greenhouse gases, the Earth would be sitting at a temperature of about minus 18 degrees average. So some 30 degrees less than what we have. So greenhouse gases are a pretty damn good thing, actually, because without them, we would be literally freezing. Actually, we wouldn't be there. So greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, so water vapor, CO2, methane, different nitrogen gases, F gases basically reflect part of this infrared radiation back to the Earth, and the average temperature rises. So the problem, so CO2 is a good thing, but it's like chocolate. If you have too much of it, that can be a problem. And we are kind of addicted, not to CO2, but we are addicted to energy in our society. We basically, modern society is built on machines, and machines are mostly run with fossil fuels that generate CO2, and the temperature goes above the comfortable temperature value. So here is a plot of temperature of the last 20,000 years, from the Ice Age to now. And basically, we are living in this nice fluctuations around the current temperature since about 11,000 years. And what's interesting, mankind has been around for much longer. Sapiens has been around for something like 300,000 years. But all the cool stuff in the history of humanity happened in the past 10,000 years. So it looks like, so from the agriculture to the first civilization, empires, and so it's really a sweet spot for mankind to be in that area, and we remained in that sweet spot until somebody invented the steam engine. And okay, that's where our current predicament started. And over the last 100 years, a really unprecedented rise of 1.2 degrees in average temperature over 100 years, which is something that it's a rate of change that has never been witnessed on the planet. And the expected that we will see is that we might go, if things go the way are going now, we might go to a rising temperature from the zero. So the zero is actually the average temperature in the pre-industrial time, or about 3 degrees, 2.7, 3.3, depending on the estimates. 3.3 degrees doesn't sound like a lot. Okay, 3 degrees more, 3 degrees less. If it's more, I'll turn the air conditioning. If it's less, I'll put a sweater. Okay, this is Europe with 3 degrees less. So 3 degrees less, we would be sitting under 100 meters of ice. So 3 degrees of average change in temperature is a hell of a lot. And so that's the number one impact. And of course, there's a lot of impacts that are to be considered. And I would like you now to answer the question, which of the impact of climate change concern you most? You've heard of sea level rise, glacier melting, whatever comes to your mind. Water disparity, melting ice cap, there you go. Glacier, water disparity, biodiversity degradation, destruction of ecosystems, yes. Starvation, yeah. Crops, that extreme weather events. War, indeed, that can be, can certainly be one of the impacts. Yes, food security. Yeah, communities, least at fault, being the most affected. I think people from one of the Pacific islands just got generously from Australia a guarantee that the day their island will be totally flooded, they have a guaranteed permit to move to Australia, which will not give their land back, but that's and Australia is, with all the coal that is produced in Australia, is certainly much more responsible for climate change than the people living in the Pacific Islands. Loss of habitat, natural disasters, food security, extreme weather. Yes, so, and I will switch to now En-ROADS to just give you a first glimpse of how to look at impacts on En-ROADS. So basically, and we'll go into more details, basically you have the top two graphs that you can play with. You can choose from a number of sets of graphs. And at the bottom, you can set different policies. And one of the set of the graphs is the impacts. So we mentioned, I heard, so sea level rise. So you can look at the sea level rise expected at the end of the century. So this is all the plots are plotted between the beginning of the century to 2100. And currently, is expected at 70 centimeters sea level rise. Mentioned ecosystem shifts. Okay, so this is the areas of Earth where the ecosystem will dramatically change. Okay, so it's an area as large as South America by the end of the century. Ice melting, so probability of ice-free summer, it can go in 2100, it can go up to 77%, almost guaranteed at least once before the end of the century. Starvation, that's a particularly interesting one. I never find a decrease in crop yields. Okay, so these are some major crop yields, and this is the average expected decrease in crop yield from warming. Then there's many more, and you can explore. One thing I want to show you, so you see there's always, and most of the plots, you have a blue line and a black line. So the black line is what in En-ROAD is called the baseline. So the way things will go if no further action is taken. And the blue line is the result of the policies that we're going to set up. So for example, if I set promote renewables, you see things improve a little bit. Okay, so at every step we can see our decisions, what is the impact they have. Somebody mentioned war. I think it's very interesting because I showed you the global change in crop yield, and that's one of the limitations of En-ROAD, is that it's really a global model. You cannot use En-ROAD except for a few things like sea level rise. I'll show you later. You cannot check your favorite spots. What happens here? It's really a global area. So we said huge loss of crop yield, but it varies a lot. You see, there's actually a whole area where crop yield will increase. So on average, it will go down, but some areas it will increase, some areas it will decrease. And speaking of risk of starvation, keep in mind this big red band in the global south, and look how it compares to the current hunger map. It almost overlaps. So the people who are suffering from hunger are the ones that will be hit most by the drop of crop yields. And look at the institutional fragility index that measures how countries are fragile because of existing wars, corruption, and whatever. Again, the fragile states are more or less in the same band. So when we say climate change can result in wars, it's a sad reality. And certainly it will result in huge migrations We're not talking about the 1 or 2 million migrants that scare so much Europe these days. We're talking about hundreds of millions of migrants around the world, because there will be areas that will not be livable anymore unless something is done. Okay, so let me tell you about the baseline, because it's important we understand. So in every of these plots, or in most of these plots, there will be this baseline and the current scenario. Baseline is based on the elaboration of the IPCC scenarios. So here you see in terms of time and gigaton of emission equivalent CO2. So all the different greenhouse gases are calibrated against CO2 because methane is much more active in terms of greenhouse effect. F gases even more. So it's standardized to CO2. So this is total of gigaton of CO2 equivalent. This is the trend until now. This is here you have the trend, the line that it should follow in order to remain within the 1.5 limit that was agreed in Paris. The other line is the 2 degrees limit. So between the two lines, that's where we should move if we want to remain within the area. Now, you may know that as part of the UNFCCC, the big world agreement, every year the countries that are part of the agreement meet in the various COP, COP 1 to COP 28. Just for fun, I once made a plot of the greenhouse emission versus COP number. It's a very nice straight line. And one of the commitment they come up is what they call the nationally determined contribution, which is the commitment of each country to do something to reduce the emission. So the current nationally determined contribution would bring us here. Okay, this is the current situation, which is already above the 2 degrees limit. Now, nationally determined contributions are not legally binding. So the countries can say, okay, we're going to do this and that, but they're not obliged to do. The red line is what has been actually implemented in terms of policies. So this red line is bring to an average temperature rise of around 2.7 degrees. En-ROADS is a little bit more pessimistic and is in a sense, it's within the range of the 25 to 75% percentiles of the implemented policies. Okay, because implemented policies, that still doesn't mean that the policies will work. They still have to be implemented correctly, enforced, checked, and so on. So they're a little bit more pessimistic than that. So that would be the blue dot corresponds to what is the baseline in En-ROADS, which is a little bit more pessimistic than the IPCC implemented policies current estimates, but not that far. Even 2.7 degrees is beyond, way beyond what is reasonable. So again, just as a reminder, most of the issue come from the energy sector, almost 75% essentially CO2. And then there's another quarter that come from collection of waste, industry, agriculture, but still 1/4 is enough. Without addressing all the aspects, we cannot reach the range 1.5 to 2. So how do we do that? People have to make choices. They have to make decisions. There is a nice research from the Columbia Management School. I can show you the link later, where they ask people to rank different actions that can, how effective they are in reducing emission, personal actions, but also rank companies, rank products, and so on. And basically, the result is that it's perfectly coherent with the total random choices. So most of the people don't know what to do and what works. Interestingly, there is absolutely no correlation on political ideas. So right-wing climate deniers are just as bad as left-wing climate activists. It doesn't have a relationship with climate concern. It doesn't have any relationship. People can self-rate. Do you think you know more about CO2 emissions than the average? And people who think they know more just score just as bad. So experts score a little bit better. So it's important to provide some form of education. But at the same time, and this is Professor John Sterman, one of the initiators of the En-ROAD and Climate Interactive, they actually did a research giving people, after giving graduates of MIT information about climate and see if they can draw the proper conclusions. And there again, it was a disaster. So just showing research shows that just showing people's research does not work. And the idea behind En-ROAD is to go a step further and give people some tools, some practical tools to play, to try, to test, and to make up their own mind. And that's how En-ROAD was started. En-ROAD, so it's a fairly complex program, not as complex as the big integrated simulation programs because it runs online. So that's a great advantage. It has basically no granularity. It's the whole world, but you have an idea, you want to try, and you see it immediately. It's based on some 400 scientific papers. They are all quoted and referenced. All the equations in the model are published in the model. So you can really go and dig it in, learn, or if you have a different ideas, you can change the assumptions and see what your idea has in terms of impact. So basically you have the energy supply, coal, oil, natural gas, so the fossil fuels, bioenergy, renewables, nuclear. For people keen about fusion and thorium nuclear reactors that really want to look forward, anybody can enter a new zero carbon and see what the impact is. Carbon price, then the actual demand size in terms of transport and building, the growth factor, the economic growth and the population, and then the other 25% land, food, afforestation, agriculture, and the possibility to technological carbon removal. So when you see that, let me ask you the next question. What would you start on? You have the 18 or mixture of most of the cursors. What do you think is going to be most effective? You can pick any, and let's see, and then we'll rank them and we'll try to together. Okay, coming. Okay, discourage oil, discourage coal, renewables, encourage nuclear, efficiency. I think you can pick more than one. So if you have, you can rank them, say first, second, third. There you go. Okay.
Roberto, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Do you sometimes switch the order in which they appear? Because I think discourage oil and coal are at the top.
Well, normally the first choice goes to the top.
No, what I mean is I think in the thing that we could select from, I think that they were quite high up already. You don't have to answer now. It was just to wonder if you switch them around a bit.
No, normally they're in a fixed order in the choice. Yeah. So discourage oil, limit deforestation, building and industry efficiency, encourage renewables, nuclear, transport efficiency, discourage natural gas, and so on. So we can start working on that. And I will close the poll because I want to take them one at a time. And so the first one was discourage oil. So I can put a tax on oil just by dragging this, very highly taxed or highly taxed, and see how this, let me go into temperature change, or actually we have the temperature there, greenhouse gas concentration, okay? So from no tax to tax, we see how the oil consumption goes down, the greenhouse concentration goes down, kind of slowly though, and we see there's an impact. Actually, I can go a bit round, yeah, about 2 degree, 2/10 of a degree in impact. So it's bringing down by 2/10 of a degree. It's interesting to see also what other impact, for example, air pollution from energy. Interesting, it goes up a little bit. What may happen if I look at, if you see as oil goes down, coal goes up. So it's really an interactive market. If you have less of something available, you're going to buy more of everything else, and not necessarily the renewables or the carbon free. Even coal will benefit if we just try to suppress oil. So that's initially can be a bit counterintuitive. We were hoping to reduce, for example, pollution by having less oil, but actually pollution goes up.
Well, the next is discourage coal.
So the next is discourage coal, so we can catch up. But before we do that, let me ask you another question. What do you think will be the impact? And no, it's not locked. What do you think will be the impact in terms of reduction? You've seen the oil, reducing oil reduced by 2/10 of a degree. What do you think reducing coal will do? And we can have a big reduction, 0.4 of a degree or more, or no impact, or even okay, so some very optimistic, 0.4, some less optimistic, 0.3, 0.1. So somebody thinks it's a bad idea to actually make the temperature higher. So it will increase the temperature and increase greenhouse gases. Okay. So let's try. And actually, it's a pretty big effect. We went from 3.1 to 2.9, like oil. So another 0.2. But you see now, contrary to oil, now the impact on air pollution is huge. So the co-benefit of the different choices are not necessarily the same depending on which lever we try to play with. Let me see what's next.
Next is building and industry efficiency.
Okay, so I will pull energy efficiency in building and energy efficiency in transport. There was both? Okay.
Yeah.
You see, energy efficiency brings down the whole energy consumption all across. It doesn't have a huge effect on the energy mix. They're all reduced more or less at the same level. I will probably not have the time to go into many of the details, but I want to show you, as you click on these elements, you have more detail parameters you can play with. So here we are, for example, the actual impact is increasing the efficiency of 3.5 per year, starting from year 2024. But you can change that in terms of coal and oil. For example, if we put a heavy tax per ton, but we could, for example, force the reduction of infrastructure. Here we are playing with the market by changing the price of coal. But we could actually enforce law to reduce, to prohibit new coal infrastructure, or actually enforce reduction. If we enforce reduction, coal would go down even further. So we could, for example, say that by 2040, there's almost no coal impacting. What does efficiency mean? For example, transport efficiency may mean more public transport or promoting using the bike, making sure that cities are designed in the 15-minute city where you can walk 15 minutes to most of the destinations that you need for your life. What other, we looked at reducing coal, reducing oil, increasing efficiency. I have another question for you, which is, let me reset the here. What do you think are other aspects of these choices that we have made so far? Okay, because we are changing, we are playing with the energy, which is kind of the vital blood of our society. So there are many other aspects. There are lots of aspects of equity. So what do you think are equity issues or other societal issues in the 4 choices that we have made so far? Can be related to the coal. Well, what are other impacts of reducing coal? What are other impacts besides temperature of promoting more efficient transportation? Any idea? Wealth equality, average income, yeah, not putting taxes on energy has a different impact depending on your income. The energy resources will be unbalanced between countries. Wealth inequality, developing countries will be slowed down. Could be jobs. People in those areas will basically, well, they will lose their jobs. Will there be enough jobs to replace them? What will be the impact? While you keep looking, for example, oops, that's not the one. For example, you can look here on the financial and look at the cost of energy. And we see our taxes on coal and oil increase the cost of energy in terms of dollars per gigajoules. There's a peak in the 30s. Okay, so that will not be, unless political choices are made, those costs will not be evenly distributed or distributed with equity across the population. In particular, coal. There are areas in the world where people need coal to basically cook for the family. You tell them you don't use coal anymore, what are you going to do? At the same time, there can also be positive benefit. As we said, the air pollution is going down, and most of the time, actually, lower income populations tend to live in areas that are more affected by pollution. So this is a positive aspect of reducing fossil fuels, and in particular, reducing coals. Promoting walking and biking have positive benefit for health. Promoting public transportation has positive benefits for, again, lower income populations who may now have more access to transportation rather than just having private transportation. So all these choices have a number of ramifications, and it is very, very important that when decisions are made, they are made consciously about that. Yeah.
You want to be, number 4 was promote nuclear, encourage nuclear.
Encouraging nuclear. Let me go back to.
Sorry?
I was suggesting to keep this one displayed. This graph.
We can, yeah. We can look at the other ones later. Encouraging nuclear, see, has a little effect on cost of energy, but quite late. Okay, it takes quite a long time. It has no effect on. We look at the. Let's see what's the effect on the energy mix. See, nuclear goes up, but it eats a lot of renewables. So nuclear and renewable are kind of in competition. And doing more of one usually means doing less of the other. So it's really a balance between the two. What other benefits of nuclear can, besides price, can you think of? Let me reset this. What are co-benefits of promoting nuclear versus for example, renewables, and maybe what are also the challenges. Yes, the one big advantage of nuclear compared to renewable, it provides a stable production of energy, and you can control it. Solar and wind, you depend on the sun, and you depend on the wind. So you need tools to balance. Biomass aren't that we can go back to the biomass. Yeah, that's an interesting point. As more efficient than renewables, less use of soil, grid stability. Fission no benefits. Well, that's arguable, but for the moment, it's still fairly far in the future. And that's also another problem of one of the issues with nuclear is the timing. As you have seen, the impact of nuclear, oh, I'm on the wrong one. The impact of nuclear happen after some time. It takes time. There is a fairly long process to design, approve, build. So that is a challenge. What is the next, Richard?
Encourage renewables.
Okay, so we encourage renewables. You see, renewables squeeze out nuclear a little bit. And they also bring down the price much faster. Because actually, if you look at the cost of energy, marginal cost of electricity, you see that at the moment we are at a point where renewable are beginning to beat everybody else, and they go all the way, especially if we subsidize them, they all go all the way down, thanks to the subsidies, almost to zero. And then they rebound. Why do you think it rebounds? Once you have a large percentage of renewable that is above 50% of the energy mix, you cannot dispose of storage. So if you add the cost of storage to the cost of renewables, you have this bounce, okay? Until there's this bump, thanks to our subsidies, but then it starts getting into the percentage where you need some way to balance, some active way to balance the variability, the daily availability, the hourly availability, the seasonal variability. So you have to invest heavily in storage. Let's go to the next.
Limit the deforestation.
Limit deforestation. So let me bring back. Yeah.
We have only 10 minutes
Yeah.
left until the event. I mean, we can try still this one with the deforestations, and then maybe we can try to.
I can accelerate to.
Perfect.
Deforestation, you see, has a little impact. Limiting deforestation, we gain 1%. So it is useful, but it's not going to change the situation dramatically. One action that really accelerate everything is carbon price. If I put heavy carbon price, I can immediately cut down from several tenths of a degree. But again, same problem as before. Carbon price, if I look at financial cost of energy, huge spike. And actually, if I look at revenue from taxes and subsidies, I actually, the cost of subsidies is actually more than the cost of the revenue of the taxes. So that's, but it's very effective. If I go greenhouse gas emissions, you see, I'm cutting down very effectively fossil fuel, CO2. So in order to reach and to cross the 2°, I think the next steps are to do, electrification. And work on waste and leakage. Waste and leakage has a very big effect because it impacts methane and it impacts F gases. The F gases are the ones that were responsible of the ozone hole, and they've been forbidden by the Montreal Agreement. So you see that Montreal gases, without any action, are decreasing, but they would be replaced by HFC that do not generate ozone. But unless we have actively prohibiting them, they would have a huge impact in terms of greenhouse gas and greenhouse effect. We're at 1.9, so we can also input carbon dioxide removal. And if you go in the details, you can see the values. You can play individually with the various choice, direct air carbon capture, enhanced mineralization. And you can play with the agricultural emission. And here it's interesting because you can play with livestock and crops. So better agricultural practices, but also play with your own diet. And this has a big effect as well. If we all reduced the average intake of meat, we could have a sizable impact on greenhouse emissions. Yeah. And temperature raise. So we have a scenario with a mix and match of a number of options that bring us to 1.6. Of course, it doesn't come cheap. It requires a really determination from countries to implement. It raises serious social issues and equity issues, but it's doable. The world still can remain within the limits of the Paris Accord. So that's the conclusion for today, but it's going to be an easy task. Thank you all, and if you have any question.
Thank you so much, Roberto. I don't know if anybody has any questions here before we move to the networking. Okay, maybe go.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I was wondering, I know it's super complicated, but if you can say some words about the models like underlined here, because it's I guess it's super complex, but for example, I was thinking when you say more nuclear, so what is the assumption behind? Like they assume to do the forecast, like they assume that all the countries will increase or will adopt nuclear, like these kind of things.
Yeah, the model is global, and it considers activity from all the countries. So this is the highest view of the system model. It starts from these 4 elements: carbon intensity, energy intensity, population, and consumptions, which you can actually see in the model as what's called the Kaya graphs, because basically it's a researcher, Japanese research physicist, Mr. Kaya, that was the first. It's not rocket science. If take CO2 divided by energy, multiplied by energy, divided by GDP, multiplied by GDP, divided by population, multiplied by population. It's a total equality. You just multiply and divide, but you separate the problem of CO2 in this 4 problems. And intensity of the energy, so CO2 emission from the energy, intensity of final energy, energy density, and GDP per capita. So this is the starting point. And then energy intensity drives, and population and consumption drives energy demand, and carbon intensity drives CO2 emission, which drive greenhouse concentration, plus energy demands from because of all the waste generate the other F gases, methane, nitrogen gases, land use, same thing, and the whole greenhouse gas concentration determines temperature, that determines impact, that have impact of land and on consumption. So this is the general overview. If you want to go into more details, in each of these cursors, you have information, and it tells you the details of what's behind and the relevant references. So you can click and go directly to the paper. And you can also go into the help and look at the technical notes. So all the equations are published and referenced, and you can really, there's about 400 papers referenced. So it takes a while to pick them out. I didn't read them all. I'm still far from it, but every once in a while I try to dig in a little part. It's a bit overwhelming, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a, oh, you're doing the question, yeah.
It's a quick one, just curious. Have you run, or do you know if Ian Rhodes is being promoted next to policymakers?
Next to?
Policymakers.
Politicians. Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. This type of events have been now run in 140 countries. There's been 240 or 50,000 people, ranging from school kids to the US Congress, policymakers in different countries. Absolutely, that's actually what they want to do, to bring this to policymakers so they can touch immediately have a feedback on their ideas and policies. So absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for this talk. Amazing tool. I think I was dreaming of something like this actually. But I have a question about how you can actually simulate the lifestyle people have, because in your different cursors here, we saw, for example, okay, improve efficiency of transport, which means more public transport, okay, but how can you, so we saw also reduce meat consumption. I think this is the key spot for me, because that's really where we are going to tell people,
Yeah.
I mean, that they can't or they should not, or they will be taxed if they do. But this is where we should be, like, I don't know, when I see this amount of energy, I'm wondering on which base you put that. Do we still have an American lifestyle or a Kenyan lifestyle? Because this is not going to...
Yeah, that's the limitation of the model, that is really a global. And of course, the potential of reduction from an American is totally different from the potential of reduction of somebody living in average African country. Absolutely, the model doesn't have the granularity to do that. What I like, and when I have decided this kind of questions, is to bring out these two slides. This is the notion of the planetary limits, because climate change is just one of the issues. And this gentleman, led by Johan Rockström, looked at all those parameters, and each of those parameters, from climate change, novel entities, plastics. Our brains have so many grams of plastic now, and sites, ozone depletion, atmospheric aerosol, ocean acidification, phosphorus in nitrogen flows, freshwater user, land system change, and biosphere integrity. They all have limits and they all have tipping points. And in color are the ones that are already either reaching or gone beyond the tipping point. And the next thing, and I'll get back to you, the basic idea would be to work in what they call the donut economy, which is to have a lifestyle where our economy doesn't push any of the physical boundaries outside, but provides a decent living. And basically inside you have the SDGs in some other form. So that would define the area of lifestyle and of economic development that would be consistent with everybody having enough to have a decent life and not screwing the planet.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those things. I was more wondering about your tool itself, like, for example, because if you said, okay, we are going to use the carbon price, which is going to be high, obviously carbon itself is not what you do. Is like what you're doing is like either eating meat or taking a plane.
Yeah.
So if you just use a generic mechanism such as carbon price, but you say, okay, you're using, like, this is too global. Like, if you use carbon in an hospital, or if you use carbon to go to take a plane in the other side of the world, it doesn't have the same impact at all. So
yeah.
Can you, with your tool, forbid things like taking planes, or push things saying like?
No, this is really a global vision. Then you have, for example, in France, you have l'atelier d'automne, where you work really on your own personal carbon budget, and what action can you do, starting from what your personal lifestyle, what action can you do to reach the 2 tons per year of carbon emission that each of us as a citizen of the world would be allowed to, except Americans typically consume on average 14 tons. I think French around 8 or 9, and in many countries way below 2. But that is really, you really have to go with individual tools, country-specific tools, or lifestyle-specific tools. The 1% richest 1% of the world generates, I think, 10% of the carbon emissions because of their lifestyles. I just learned that the CEO of Starbucks decided to, he is hired in Seattle, but he lives in California, I think in San Francisco, and he's going to commute every other day by private jet. So that's a lifestyle issue.
I think we have a question online.
Yes, with Maria. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a bit of echo, but okay. Okay, so thanks a lot for the presentation. It's a very interesting tool. I work in the IT department and I'm very much interested in all these sustainability issues. And I wonder if the tool, if there are any plans to expand other areas, like for instance, the carbon footprint of digital technologies.
Footprint of digital technology.
They are, so the Climate Interactive is very interested in expand on all possible areas. It's a matter of resources. So for example, they have been funded to refine recently the F gases cursors to have a more detailed view of how to control F gases. So if you know of anybody who's interested to finance adding a cursor for digital carbon footprint, I'm sure they'd be interested. And it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. I think the level of energy consumption of data centers around the world is now skyrocketing.
I'm not sure if also Maria wanted to ask whether in this tool there is a way to basically measure or adjust the indicators that you had there to represent the digital footprint, or it's not possible at the moment?
Not that I can think of. No, that's you would have to calculate the impact, and that wouldn't be so obvious now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a sorry, it's not to do the model, it's just like a general question. How important do you think biodiversity is in the fight against extreme climate, or just climate change in general?
It's probably more the other way around. It's climate change that is impacting biodiversity in a number of ways. There is certainly some cycle. I think, for example, in the ocean, there is microorganisms that take carbon to create the carapace, and because of acidification, that doesn't happen anymore. So that reduces the carbon intake, the global carbon intake of the ocean. But most of the impacts are the other way around, that the environment changes. For example, always in the ocean, coral bleach is a big effect, because that reduces biodiversity in the sea. So it's more climate change impacting biodiversity, but they're related, of course.
Just sorry, but do you think, because biodiversity has been seen to still have an impact on how extreme certain climates can get, as in it can kind of control the temperatures, do you think that can be like useful in a way? How useful do you think that could be, I guess?
To do what?
Because it's been seen that biodiversity can have an impact in terms of, for example, heat in certain areas, temperature, regulating extreme temperatures. Do you think that will make a big impact if we try and basically prioritize saving or protecting biodiversity?
Biodiversity, I think it's a minor effect, the one I was mentioning, but biodiversity should by all means be protected. I think we are reaching the level of the sixth biggest biodiversity crisis in the history of the planet. So I think biodiversity has to be protected per se, independently of the, and that's what this plot is about. And actually, many of these areas are connected. Aerosol is connected to climate change. Actually, in some cases, in a positive way, in the sense because it's protecting a little bit. Ozone depletion is related. Fresh water use will have big impacted big from climate change. Land system change is related to climate change. So all these limits are interconnected heavily.
Any other? Okay, there's yours.
Yeah, so this model, basically you could see it as a huge control feedback system, yeah, but lots of parameters.
Yeah.
I suppose it's continuously under development, you keep going on it, yeah?
Yes.
What's the maturity status really, what would be the next things that you think of integrating? As of today, we cannot speak yet of a model of the world yet, a complete model, but yeah, it gives a few leads, but I still wonder if everything has been considered. You could even think of war has an impact on climate, pollution, buildings that have to be rebuilt, all these sort of events. How do you what are the new, what are the next ideas?
Well, I'm not part of the developers, so I cannot speak for them. But I think one thing that would be very important at the moment, there's still little understanding, and it's not entered in the model, the economic feedback. So basically, they have a function that you can model GDP reduction because of rise of temperature, but you cannot, for example, model the impact on GDP of the taxes and carbon pricing. So that would be very interesting to see, and for me at least, it would be the really next big thing to have in the model, to have this feedback between the policies and the economic sector. That's what I would like to see.
Thank you. Any last questions before we move to our one?
Please. Coming back to the I don't know.
Yeah, when it's red, it's working.
Yeah. Coming back to the page with the sliders, behind it, there are a couple of presumptions like population growth. And I think these are fixed curves, is that right?
Yeah.
And so, but what about having the population as a slider? I mean, personally, I think many of the problems we have is because there's just so many people on the planet. What if we could reduce the population somehow over the next decades?
Yeah,
even really reduce? I think that's what we would need, but okay, I don't think it's going to happen, but.
Well, population, let's see. So population is one of the Kaya graph that I was mentioning, is one of the really the core issues, because it directly multiplies. It's one of the few of the four that it's not being solved, but it's getting less dramatic. The latest projections of the United Nations is that population should peak around the 80s of the century. Still a lot of people. It would still be very good to reduce the number of people a little bit. The best solution that I know of is women, girls, education, because that's the most impactful in reducing fertility. Unfortunately, if you look at Afghanistan, it's going straight in the opposite direction. Yeah, but that's what would work, and it would probably actually definitely be a very good thing to do independently of the population. But whether there will be or not, I don't know. Then population control policies never really worked very well. Creates a lot of social tension, stress. Again, inequalities, people can sneak around it. They will do it in a number of ways. So it's a very touchy issue. And girls' education would be very effective, but again, the time frame is very, very long, but should be done by all means.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and thank you everybody for all the questions. I believe that we can say that coming back to your first slide or question, that you are more hopeful than hopeless about the climate change, right?
I'm hopeful, but it takes people like you to take action.
Thank you you wanted to say something?
Yeah, maybe to conclude, after the presentation, do you have more hope or less hope than at the beginning? That you can answer in your mind, or maybe now at networking.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think some people are for sure happy to continue the discussion in the restaurant one. So my colleagues have already set up the table on the terrace. So when you descend to the stairs, you enter restaurant one and you go to the left side of the terrace and they are there with the table. So you should be able to find them. Thank you very much. And once again, a big round of applause to Roberto.
Thank you everyone for listening.